The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
If you really want to doge, this is how you doge. You don't vote for bad legislation that expands government. Thank you.
Now we're talking about taxpayer money, and we talk about accountability. It is their money. This isn't a government program we're actually spending on. We're actually giving it back to the people of Idaho.
There's other options for making our ballots more secure, such as using watermarks or putting holograms on the ballots.
And I think that that's what we need to look at more, is trying to get back to what we used to be, where our churches and our families took care of each other instead of relying on the state.
I asked the question rhetorically, if we gave them another $1 billion, they wouldn't be happy. Well, we've given them $2 more billion, and it's not enough.
We need to start making Idaho first. We need to start making America first.
Other states like Texas and Florida have enacted similar laws to address illegal immigration, both locally and in their communities. And Idaho has the right to protect itself when the federal government has failed to do that.
COVID presented us with quite the enigma. We didn't really know what it was or what to do, but that is no excuse to violate the rights of the citizens of the state of Idaho.
Say vote no on this and let the teachers teach and quit bringing in coaches to teach the teachers to teach, and let's get education going again in Idaho.
I don't know what's coming after this current administration for the feds, and we need this law because our federal laws on immigration have failed.
Mr. President, I think it's incumbent upon us to allow parents to use their hard-earned dollars to provide what's best for their children.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
My concern is that the resilience of Idahoans who believe in self-reliance and self-responsibility will be eroded.
We need to be protecting our First Amendment rights, not inventing ways to slowly chip away at them.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
Yeah, watch it.
Come on, guys.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming back to Idaho Signal. You never know out there. It is January 19th, 2026. Idaho Signal is live across all platforms. So if you're watching on YouTube, Rumble, please click follow, click that alert button. And if you're right now watching on X and Facebook, please share the stream right now. My name is Matt Edwards, and today is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So I'm going to kind of want to cut through the holiday pleasantries and talk about the man's message. I'll tell you what. I've been mulling over this idea on kind of what it means, right? What it means to judge someone by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin. And it was a pretty straightforward call that MLK offered back in the day. But in today's, upside down world, that idea feels almost revolutionary again, doesn't it? And I've got a theory on why my generation, Generation X, might be the only one that actually took those words at face value and lived them. And why we've become so militant in our reactions to the BS that we see today compared to the other generations on either side of X. First, the baby boomers. They lived through the age when King actually was alive and spoke and was assassinated for it. Some may even have marched in solidarity, and others pushing back on his rhetoric. And then those that were just trying to keep their heads down and stay alive during the 60s and 70s. They were there for this raw birth of the idea amid all the tension and division of the 60s. Now, on the other side, you got the millennials. They sort of got the Cliff Notes version in school, but then they had to wade through the explosion of identity politics, the alphabet mafia demanding special categories, affirmative action morphing into a permanent grievance industry. For them, King's vision got drowned out by endless talk of systemic this and privilege that. But to Generation X, we hit that sweet spot in the 80s and 90s. Racism was still around, let's not pretend that it vanished. But King's words were that clear, no-nonsense standard that we were raised on. Character first, skin color irrelevant. No victimhood Olympics, no group quotas, just treat people as individuals. And now that principle has done a complete 180. Welcome to the DEI era, where merit, achievement, and character have been tossed aside in favor of judging people by their race, their color, their gender, whatever identity they claim, handing out prizes if you're anything but sort of this straight white male, right? King's dream has turned into a nightmare, and we can't seem to wake up from it. But don't just take my word for it. You guys know this. Charlie Kirk has pointed out how King's content of character line is a direct rebuke to DEI's racial bureaucracies. They shove individual merit aside for group preferences. Thomas Sowell, the brilliant economist who's been dismantling bad ideas with surgical precision for decades, calls DEI ideological conformity wrapped in demographic diversity. A system that pretends disparities are always discrimination and ends up punishing competence in the name of equity in order to arrive at their utopian communist world. The great historian Victor Davis Hanson has also argued that the modern left's obsession with race and identity is the very antithesis of King's colorblind dream, turning America into a fractured society obsessed with grievances instead of unity. Even here in rock-solid conservative Idaho, we're not immune, folks. In fact, we are now the target. Oregon, Washington, California having been completely conquered. Even Utah is closer to collapse these days. DEI has crept into our schools with inclusive curricula that sort kids by race and gender and feelings and income status and all sorts of jazz, right? It's in our colleges with bloated diversity offices that value everything except actual achievement. And even in local governments with equity jargon and pride and progress hoisted up on the flagpoles. It's toxic. DEI literally trains people to judge others not by the content of their character, but by the color of their skin, the gender swirling in their heads, and who they choose to sleep with or vote for. Folks, if we're serious about honoring Martin Luther King today, we must mock this inversion into the ground and demand better. Character over color. That's the hill that we must retake. All right. Thank you for joining us. That's all I got for that. We are going to get focused on the state legislature because the committees ramped up today. We had last week paid attention to the Joint Finance and Appropriation Committee as they heard all the pitches from the governor's office and the various agencies and where they were headed in terms of revenue shortfalls and how much money they're going to be requesting and all of that. And all of that will continue. But this morning they were discussing revenue projections, and we have I believe we have a bunch of clips from that. But first, let's bring in Brian Allman. There he is, and he is in. He's in a where are you today, Brian? You're
as usual, an undisclosed location.
Oh, an undisclosed location. Okay. Sometimes you got the hall behind you. Sometimes you're in an undisclosed location. Exactly. So, walk us through this morning's. It wasn't a very long meeting. It was a short meeting to discuss particularly what.
Or you want to talk about JFAC first or House State Affairs?
Yeah. JFAC.
Yeah. So, every year the legislature has to, before they can balance the budget, they need to know how much money is going to come in. And that's a guessing game because it's dependent on corporate income taxes, individual income taxes, sales taxes, and economic fluctuations that change those things. There's a whole committee that needs to pick that number. And they met Thursday, came up with a number, and then JFAC didn't hear it on Friday. It turns out they wanted a little more time to debate and discuss, so they read the numbers over the weekend, and everybody came in ready to go this morning. There was a little bit of confusion. One member made a motion to adopt the report of the committee, and another member made a motion to accept the report of the committee. And there was a lot of deliberation over the difference between those two words. To make a long story short, they did end up voting to adopt the number, which means JFAC's official numbers have been set. They are projecting, I believe it's $5.6 billion in revenue for the rest of fiscal year 2026, which ends in June. And then I think it's $5.8 billion in revenue for fiscal year 2027. So that's how much they think they're going to have available to spend. And then now they can start setting budgets to meet that and, presumably leave a little bit of wiggle room just in case the economy doesn't cooperate.
Now, are these projections lower than the years past? Are we still higher as we continue to grow?
Now, the projections are a bit higher than years past, and because they always assume that the economy is going to keep growing, inflation, but also, GDP goes up. However, every month going forward, the Department of Financial Management will revise the projection numbers. They'll take this as the starting point, and then they'll look at, okay, what's the economic activity of this month? How much money has actually physically come in through the state through income taxes and sales taxes? Sales taxes, obviously, they come in, ongoing. Corporate income taxes, usually, I assume they come in quarterly. Individual income taxes, a lot of, those only come in once a year. So you're trying to have to guess what those are going to be. So they revise those numbers. And that's where this whole hullabaloo started last summer when DFM came out with a revised economic projection that said their numbers are going to be way lower. Some people were predicting up to $800 billion lower than projections, which would, blow a hole in the budget. They'd have to cut a bunch. Not that I'm complaining about cutting budgets. Turns out in December, those projections actually, it came in above projections. So they're actually looking fairly good for the rest of fiscal year 2026. The number that JFAC adopted is slightly higher than the governor's number, but it's lower than some of the other numbers that some others, basically this special committee comes in and they hear from the associated taxpayers, the tax commission, universities present their numbers, banking experts present their numbers, and then they vote on what they think it's going to be. It's a big guessing game.
Yeah. But real quick though, Brian, we heard over the summer, after the budget was set and we had this $400 million plus whatever in tax cuts, that the revenue projections were completely off and we actually have to pull back and we need a 3% across the board cut. And there was all this big news made about this. And then what you're saying now though, is when December rolled in, everybody looked at the number and it was like, whoa, all of a sudden there was, I think it was in the corporate income tax area that there was almost like a 50% increase in over or a 50% actual number over the projected number. I think we have a graphic here that shows that. So this is the general fund revenue, and that middle number that has numbers over, that's December, and so the blue is the actual revenue, and the brown is the predicted revenue. It was way higher than what they thought. I mean, what's the story behind this? What happened in December?
Well, according to the report from Department of Financial Management that came out last week, on the day that the session started, corporate income taxes had been down 40%, according to their projections, and that's a lot of money. However, so they revised their projections downward. But then corporate income taxes in December came, in. They were expecting, in the first 5 months, according to this report, corporate income taxes totaled just $113 million to the general fund. But for the month of December, they expected another $106 million. The actual results were $216 million. So they got a lot in, and I think a lot of what's happening.
Throw up that other graphic that shows the numbers there. So that's the actual. You said actual corporate income 215 in December, and they were predicting 105.
Right, so it came in higher than their revised projections, which makes the total projections for the whole fiscal year look a little more stable. I've been trying to make heads or tails of why these things are happening, and the best I can understand, I'm not a CPA, I'm not an economist, is that various changes, like with the One Big Beautiful Bill, has changed the way in which corporations pay their taxes and deduct and do all the magic of accounting with them, and so it really just changed the timing of things, and so a lot came in December rather than coming in more steadily throughout the year. It is as far as I understand it.
Okay, well then, all right. So all that aside, we're now sitting here with a projection that might still be lower than what actually might come in. It sounds like
it's possible. I mean, it's every year they have to do this guessing game. They have to decide, okay, how much tax revenue is going to come in. If they put the number way too high and they spend up to it, and it doesn't come in that high, well, they'll have to do what they did this last year. Cut the budgets, which, I mean, again, I don't complain about cutting budgets, but it throws a monkey wrench into all the plans of all these agencies that have their budgets figured out, and then they suddenly have to figure out where to cut 3%. And so nobody really wants that. If they set the number too low and revenues come in a lot higher, well, then all those agencies are going to be champing at the bit for supplemental increases, saying, oh, well, we could use this money for this. Well, people are rightly going to say, we're being overtaxed, you need to give us even more money back. Yeah, so they really... They really want to get the number as right as possible. Senator Blaylock, who's on the Economic Outlook Committee, posted on X a picture of all of the projections, because each member of the committee made their own projections, their own guesses. And some of them, I assume, did the work of trying to figure out where it's actually going to be. Some of them might have just guessed. Who knows? But it turns out that the numbers they adopted is the median for the entire committee, including all the experts who came in and testified. So they're just picking a number right there in the middle. Not too big, not too small, and we'll see if it works out over the next few months.
All right, well, that's one way to do it. Going back to your point, though, on we want to make sure we're, some people think we have a spending problem. Some people think we have a revenue problem, and it always seems to fall along ideological lines here. Let's listen to Senator Wintrow. She's a member of the JFAC committee as they were debating this morning. Let's listen to some of what she had to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I just want to reiterate and underscore the comments that I made earlier, in that math is math. People are doing their best to look at trends and predict, based on those trends, what we think we might have in our coffers. So I certainly do appreciate the work of the committee in doing so, and looking at all those numbers. This middle ground seems accurate, or a good predictor. I feel more confident in it. And in my comments earlier, I think, because, as I look at the math and those predictions, I feel a little hopeful, because we are facing a crisis in our revenue shortfalls. And this might give us a little breathing room so we don't have to eliminate the very services that Idahoans depend on, in particular that mental health, healthcare, roads and bridges, public transportation, corrections, all those things that we need. And so I'm just reiterating my hopefulness. I feel a little relieved that we might not have to cut things so hard, and that we can sustain the good services that Idahoans depend on. And if that's not enough, we might consider pausing some of the things that we've done in the past, pausing that tax break, not eliminate it, but at least pause it so we don't have to just cut.
Pause.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Let's pause the tax breaks, Brian. Let's pause the tax breaks. No. How about we pause the other stuff? It's always interesting to me how they always go right whenever they say we don't want to cut services. They always go right to infrastructure and things that government, you could argue one way or another, of course, but the government kind of basically has those are the essential things that they take care of and that they work on. But she never talks about so we don't cut services like needle exchange programs, or helping people stay out of work by giving them free Medicare and all that stuff. They don't talk about those bloated things. What's your reaction to Wintrow? It's probably the same as it is with all these Democrats.
For sure. One thing sitting in JFAC this morning I was able to notice is that one of the reasons I think a lot of people were debating against the initial unanimous consent request to just adopt the committee's number and go forward was because they wanted their 5 minutes to make their points and issue their talking points. And you could see that with Senator Wintrow right there. She had all these things lined up about how we need to pause the tax cut and make sure these essential services are safe. And she didn't want the morning to go by without an opportunity to say those things on the camera for the record. But yeah, the Democrats are coming from the perspective that the whole purpose is to spend money and we need as much tax dollars as possible to support everything we want to do. Whereas most Republicans, I think, come from the opposite perspective, that we want to take as little as possible to do what government is constitutionally mandated to do and do it as small and efficiently as possible. It's very much two different worldviews at work here. And I'm thankful that the Democrats are in such a small minority that their worldview is just has no chance of being implemented. We're not going to pause the tax cuts.
Yes, I mean if you're looking at the roster of R's and D's and stuff, you can certainly have that outlook. But we also know that there's a lot of R's over there that are actual D's, and we'll get into that later in in the session. Okay, so Senator Glenita Zeiderveld on JFAC as well, fiscal hawk herself, trying to keep up, watching all of this, had her reaction to this number and what she hopes to see. Let's watch that.
I also sat on the Revenue Committee, and there was a lot of concerns listening to the economists for 4 hours, and there is a lot of uncertainty. And being self-employed myself, we always kind of take the revenue number that we had the year before, knowing that we're probably going to make that number, and then if we go above that, then we can take care of the needs that maybe we put off the following year. And so that's the reason why my revenue came in low. But sitting also on this committee last year, and a lot of the issues that we went through last year and didn't have a revenue number for, I think, 16 days, that prolonged the process. And so I'm going to be voting for this, even though it came above my forecast number, because I think we need to set this number, go forward. Let's start working on the budgets. Just because we set the forecast number here doesn't mean that we have to budget at that level. And because there is a lot of things, none of us are fortune tellers, none of us are prophets here. We don't know what the next year is going to bring. And so, but with a lot of things that we're seeing with AI changing a lot of things, with our federal debt now at 38 trillion, a lot of our budget is dependent upon that. We do have a lot of difficult decisions to make. So I am going to be voting for this because we need to start working on our budgets tomorrow.
Well said. Thank you.
Yeah, that is, definitely, Tanner. That was Co-Chair Tanner saying, well said. I agree. I think that's the key thing there is, just because we have set that number doesn't mean we have to go all the way up to the top and spend it all. I mean, you certainly don't want to go over it, but you also don't have to get to the line. You can be conservative with your spending. You can cut back.
Mm-hmm. And that's where, the Constitution says that the Idaho legislature must set a balanced budget every year. It's the one thing they have to do. And so that's why this is so important. Senator Zeiderfeld's absolutely right. They don't have to spend up that high, but there's always that temptation, which is why, sometimes having that lower projection number might be good, because then they will not be able to spend over that number just in case, that's exactly where the money comes in. And that's what Representative Tanner was saying about the governor's budget, that it only leaves, $30 million cushion, which means any economic fluctuation could suddenly wipe it out and they have to come into special session this summer. And nobody wants that.
Right.
It really is the starve the beast, plan. You cut as much money going into the government as possible, which means they only have that much to spend. So if you want to reduce spending, you reduce the revenues coming in, you cut taxes.
Right. And then Representative Chris Bruce, one of the newest members of JFAC. Love Mr. Bruce here. Love Representative Chris Bruce. Here's a guy who I don't know if this has ever been, it probably has. I don't want to give him all the credit, but it's just like having this mentality when you're sitting in JFAC is exactly why someone like Chris Bruce was voted there. Let's listen to Chris Bruce. And
Representative Bruce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to vote to adopt the number that they had set, but we hear a lot of talk about the folks who are on these programs. But I'd like to remind you of the people who are not on these programs that continue to struggle with paying their taxes. And we should think about those folks as a whole also moving forward and not continue to spend what we bring in.
I mean, as clear as day, baby, as clear as day. I mean, I don't know the ratio, but it's definitely worth saying what he just said.
Amity Shlaes wrote a great book about the Great Depression called The Forgotten Man. Franklin Roosevelt, he would always talk about the forgotten man as being the poor, the people who need government help, or in his view, needed subsidies and welfare and stuff. And that was the theme of Lyndon Johnson's Great Society as well, which brought us Medicare and Medicaid and all sorts of welfare programs. Shlaes' point, though, is that the original identification of the forgotten man were all the taxpayers who were supporting these programs, having their wealth extracted and given to others, people who didn't have enough money to lobby the government or absorb it, but who weren't poor enough to qualify for those subsidies. I just listened to a great podcast on that this morning. That I'm sure I'll write about later. It is those forgotten people in the middle, those taxpayers that Representative Bruce was talking about. And I'm so glad that he brought that up.
Yeah, it needs to be said more often. It needs to be said in the committee. It needs to be used as the argument whenever you're trying to get something cut. It needs to be used on the House floor when you're getting something that to try and fail. It's a fantastic argument, and they gotta keep pounding away at it. Okay, so that was JFAC. We only have just a couple another minute or so here, but in the House State Affairs Committee, everybody's favorite committee. Representative Bruce Skog presented 2 bills. Representative Brandon Mitchell presented a bill. And I think the one we want to focus on here is a bill that was also presented last year. I'm not sure how far along it got, but it would require that people who are going around getting signatures for a petition would also have to have on their name badge, because apparently you're supposed to wear a name badge, who's paying for this. You want to walk us through what you anticipate this bill is supposed to be doing?
Sure. I believe there was a bill last year that actually did pass that says if you are a paid signature gatherer, you have to have a name badge of some sort saying you are a paid signature gatherer. Representative Skogg's bill would add to that by saying you also have to say who is paying you, which seems to make sense to me. And there was a little bit.
Wait, real quick. So go back. What was it before? It said
I believe last year it just says you have to have a badge that says you are being paid. It doesn't have to say who's paying you, and that's what this bill is trying to address.
Okay. Now it has to say you are being paid. Now it has to say who you're being paid by. Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. It's and there was some quibbling in there, and they actually amended the bill on, in committee, which you can do when it's in RS before it's been printed as a bill. The committee can actually rewrite the bill however they want, and all they did was change instead of person or entity to persons or entities, just in case the paid signature is being paid by multiple groups. Let's say a couple of groups pool their money, and like what happened with Prop 1 ranked choice voting, you had multiple groups who were involved.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's interesting that you say you're going to force people to wear that on their chest. And I wonder if someone would come along and say, well, are we gonna make that mandatory for, who's funding a legislator's campaign? I mean, are they gonna? You always see those political cartoons, of people in Congress, and it's got Exxon and Planned Parenthood, like it's a race car driver's jacket, Very fascinating bill here. What's your take on how you think this should go?
I think it should go. It seems reasonable to me. The whole initiative process, the whole concept of the Citizens Initiative is that the citizens of Idaho want something done that the legislature's not doing, and so we have the right to put it on the ballot so that it becomes law. However, in the last few years, these initiatives have been essentially captured by big out-of-state national level lobby groups, political groups who want to make change in Idaho, and they can't get it through the legislature because it often is a very far left-wing idea, like ranked choice voting or abortion or legalizing marijuana. And so they're going to do an end run around the legislature, get it through using the initiative. But they, I think the people who are going to sign the petition or considering signing the petition deserve to have the transparency that, wait, this isn't just my neighbor who wants this done. This is some, big organization that's paying signature gatherers to go door to door and get this on the ballot.
Yeah. I mean, I see that perspective. I'm also just kind of wondering, it's like, if you're going to sign, so if you like the idea, you're going to sign it regardless of who's funding it or not. I mean, I don't know if somebody came to my door and said, like, did you come here on your own or are you being paid to do this? And it's an issue that I'm passionate about. I might be grateful that this organization was able to raise money to send people out on that. So yeah, it's an interesting take. I mean, there are definitely sunshine reports. You can look up, and see who's funding, certain organizations and that sort of thing. I mean, we have our own organizations that we have to report all of that kind of thing. So yeah, it's an interesting thing to have. And I guess we'll see how the argument continues to go. All right. It did get printed, right?
Yeah.
So
it got printed, so it'll be back for a full hearing. I just want to say real quick about House State Affairs. It's always one of the most interesting committees. It has two new members, Representative Aaron Bingham from Idaho Falls and Representative Ann Hawes from Boise, a Democrat. So two freshmen are on this committee, and that, I don't know, it should shake things up a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Brian. Well, thanks for hanging out with me this morning, and I'll let you get back to it. Where can people follow you, and what's the latest coming?
All right, over at Brian Ullman on X, gemstatechronicle.com. I just put out an article this morning that I wrote last night, just kind of looking at the House and the Senate, the differences between the two, why we have both, just a little primer as we get going. I'm still working on some things like the code cleanup that the governor wants to do. Looking ahead, there's some bills we're waiting to see. We're waiting to see the conformity bill come out and how that's going to work. I'm waiting to see, concealed carry on campus coming out. Waiting to see all sorts of stuff. So the session is just getting started. Should be some interesting stuff here in the next few weeks.
Yeah, very good. All right, sir. We will check back in with you later. Take care. Okay, what do we got here? We got the American Smoke Company, folks. The American Smoke Company. I got some back here. You guys know I keep it at the ready. This is we've talked about the cherry salt before. This is the pecan salt. It's American Smoke Company. AmericanSmokeCo.com. And what they do is they actually smoke their salts. This one, the pecan salt, they smoked for 14 hours. They take Pacific Ocean sea salt, coarse sea salt, and they put it in a smoker. And this one was smoked for 14 hours. And it just, I didn't even have to put my nose to it. This one is just so fragrant. It's incredible. It's like a campfire. And this stuff is fantastic. You put it on, it's a great way to smoke, to have that smoke flavor in your meal, in your meat, without having to wait 14 hours for the brisket on there. But you can just take a steak, put this on there, let it sit there overnight or for a couple hours, throw it on your burgers right before you throw them on the grill. I like to put them on my eggs as I'm taking them off the pan, and you just have this wonderful smoky flavor to your meal. So if you're into that, I encourage you, head over to AmericanSmokeCo.com and order yours. Order a bunch of them, and you'll get hooked just like I am. We'll be right back after this.
And that's exactly what happened. You want to pull the tape? You can pull the tape because we now got video.
Idaho is the dirt under your fingernails after an honest day's work. Idaho is the hug around your neck when your daughter spells her first word. Idaho is the written word of the law, steadfast and impartial, guarding liberty for all. Idaho is the family rifle passed down, a legacy of protection and the right to stand firm. Idaho is the echo of your own voice, a unshaken and free, standing tall among worlds silenced. Idaho is the home that's built to weather storms, not empty wallets. Idaho is the quiet trust between a patient and healer, unbroken and sacred. Idaho is the hymn carried by the Spirit, gathering neighbors together in faith and purpose. Idaho is the laughter around a campfire, a family's bond growing stronger with every word. Idaho is the pioneer's will, firm and clear. We govern ourselves, free and unbound. Idaho is what America was. Let's keep it that way. Ask your legislator to sign the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge to preserve our shared values. We ride together.
All right, everybody, welcome back. We will hopefully have Representative Heather Scott here in a few minutes. So please stick around for that. Put out the alert, put out the flare. Representative Heather Scott will be here. But in the meantime, real quickly, outside the Capitol this morning, apparently, were these folks. Today is Martin Luther King Day, so I think there were a few signs out there that were saying, something along, trying to recapture the dream and that sort of thing. But these folks, just, look, we're going to see these things all over the country. I mean, we are already seeing it. And so right now, I think in Idaho, in Boise, there's a lot of attention on our state. As I stated from the beginning, they've already conquered everything around us. So you're going to see an influx of this more and more and more. And folks, I want to tell you where they're organizing. Do you know where because they're still organizing online. You can still follow them and find out where they are online. And they while they all have these Facebook groups and such, they've all left Twitter. Twitter used to be the place where they all were. And then Elon Musk bought it, turned it into a haven for free speech, no longer suppressed those of us on the right from engaging in the conversation on X, on Twitter. And so now they are on Blue Sky. Do we have a quick Blue Sky image from Blue Sky? Blue Sky is basically Twitter. And so one of the biggest rabble rousers in the state, I don't want to necessarily say her name, but we'll throw it up here, and if you can read it, you can read it. But she had this interesting post about door knocking. If you don't knock doors, you won't win. And they're all over. They're all over on Blue Sky. Guys, I have another shot I thought I shared with you today. And maybe we can get that in there. I don't know where it went, but I thought I had one, but maybe not. Anyway, no, I got it. I got it somewhere. No, I don't. That's my fault. Oh, well, happy days are here again. Anyway, go over onto Blue Sky and just watch their activity. They are, I'm going to find it because we need to throw it up there. I don't know why. I remember doing a screenshot and then it all went away. And so there it is. And this is in connection to the we had the abortion we talked about the abortion initiative that's coming up in November. If it gets on the ballot, if it gets enough signatures and it gets on the ballot, like we were just discussing, it'll be in November. But right now they're already organizing. And so over on Blue Sky, here we go. This is normally the stuff that you would see on X. She's talking about having to collect signatures in District 1, which is up in the panhandle of North Idaho, the very top. And she says, we need to collect about 1,000 more to reach our goal. And they have 101 days left to sign, right? So this is about ending the ban on abortion. This is about bringing abortion back to Idaho. And they are out there mobilized. They have an entire website. We talked about that. They have an entire website. They have everything. She says she's going to be at Sandpoint tonight from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. collecting signatures. Someone below, throw that thing back up there. Somewhere below down there says, where can I go in Pocatello? And says, well, you have 3 options and times. Thank you for making a plan to sign in Pocatello, on the other side of the state. So don't think because you don't see these people on X anymore or on Facebook or anything that they're not mobilizing. They're out there. They're out there, and it's all on Blue Sky. So, go over to Blue Sky and check it out, folks. Check it out. And make sure you're paying attention, because if you fall asleep again, that this is coming back. So you need to stay motivated. What is this? You put this video in there if you got this video. There's people out in the rain gathering signatures. Don't wait for me, guys. You got good content. Throw it up there. We'll get to it. Because we can't get everything, and I'll say this, we can't get everything passed in the legislature, right? Yeah, here it is. There was out in the rain. There she is out in the rain collecting signatures to legalize abortion in front of the library. Look at this interaction. Who knows how they're pitching it to, our conservative brethren here in Coeur d'Alene, but this is what's going on, because not everything can go through the legislature. So they're out there, on knocking doors, boots on the ground sort of thing. And so I want to quickly go through here some of the bills that overwhelmingly got passed in the House last session that got stopped in the Senate State Affairs Committee. This is just one committee. These are a bunch of bills that were overwhelmingly passed some of them overwhelmingly passed in the House, only to find their death by not even being granted a hearing. One person, or leadership said, "Oh, we don't care that the House passed a bill. It stops here. We're not gonna do anything with it." And I believe we had Senator Taves on at the beginning of the session talking about how he has a bill that says if a bill passes the House with over a certain threshold, that it should get a hearing. It should be granted some sort of recognition on the other side. So we'll see if that rule can get through. But the first bill that passed overwhelmingly, it passed 40-29 in the House. So not too overwhelmingly, but it was a clear majority. And this legislation prohibits, this was House Bill 98. This legislation prohibits public officials from allowing school district funds, personnel, and other resources to be used in support of teachers' unions. So basically what's been happening is that you've had the state doing automatic payroll deductions on behalf of the unions. So before the teachers even get their paychecks, if they're in the union, the state will automatically deduct those funds and send them over to the union. In some districts, and I think it's the Boise School District or somewhere in Ada County, but I believe it's Boise. It might be West Ada. I'm not sure which one it is, and it might be more than just one. The state will even pay kind of like this 1.3% supplemental payment, which basically covers their union dues. So not only in certain districts, in certain school districts, not only is the state just doing the work of the union by taking the money out of the paycheck, they're actually using your tax dollars to then come around the other side and give the money back to the teacher, so they don't have to pay their union dues. Folks, this is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. That bill passed in the House and it got shelved in the Senate. So we need that to come back again. We're going to have some folks on to talk about that as soon as that bill arrives for a print hearing and starts getting its engines roaring. House Bill 230. Which one was this? This was the indecent exposure bill for sexual exhibitions. Anytime you're going to have some sort of sexual exhibition, this would say you need to take reasonable steps to restrict the access of minors. So you can't be having these provocative burlesque or strip shows or drag shows or whatever it is out in public if there's going to be children around. This bill has come. We've seen this bill come and go countless times over the last few sessions. This passed the House. It passed the House on a 54-11. 54-11. There were 11 people that were against this bill. And then it went over to the Senate and died. So that needs to be taken care of. Last year's House Bill 365 would enhance Idaho's election integrity, election security by empowering the Attorney General to investigate and prosecute election crimes in the state. It maintains the jurisdiction and authority of those currently responsible for investigations and prosecutions, but it will permit, not necessarily require, the Attorney General to also carry out investigations. So if the Attorney General's office is alerted to something that's happening that needs investigation on their part, this bill would authorize it. And I don't see any problem with having our Attorney Generals look into election integrity within the counties. I mean, it seems like it's a no-brainer, an absolute no-brainer. So there's that bill. Again, that one passed with 60-9, 60 votes. It passed. That's veto proof in the House. It makes its way over to the Senate, and bye-bye. Senate's a real big problem, folks. House Bill 376. This would be carrying firearms on certain public property in the state of Idaho. The changes proposed in this legislation concern the people's right to carry firearms on property owned by the state and its political subdivision that is normally and habitually open to the public, but is being leased or rented. This is that bill that was I think former Senator Scott Herndon brought a couple years ago that says, if the public property is being used for like a fair or a farmer's market or something, that you cannot restrict the Second Amendment, the rights of the Second Amendment, and the rights of people to carry firearms in a public space. So this bill ended up passing 56-10 inside the House. It made its way to the Senate and died. So, folks, I got a whole stack of stuff here that's just dying a death over in the Senate, and so there's only a couple of ways to fix that. And our favorite way is to simply replace the senators who are the problem in the Senate. And you do that by voting. And so we're going to vote them out. So we need your help to do that. Okay. I need you. I also want to hear if you agree with these things. Like, we want to hear your voice. We want to hear your feedback. So in order to do that, you give us a call. You call 208-402-4915. Leave us a voicemail. We will play it on the air. 30 seconds, 60 seconds, whatever it is. Leave your name and town so we know where you're calling from. And if we collect a bunch of messages on one particular topic or another, we'll pass them along to the legislatures and let them know. It's your voice, people. We are here to cut through the noise and to make sure that you can give your voice out there among all of the distractions that are out there. Okay, well, the time has come, folks. We are thrilled to welcome Representative Heather Scott to the program. Heather, thank you so much for taking the time out today to join us. I know you had a very busy summer. You were on a couple of interim committees. One was the DOGE task force, which we'll talk about at another time, because you were on this committee that was so compelling to watch some of the testimony that was coming out with parents dealing with how the courts and stuff are treating them and their families. Can you give us a little bit of a background on that committee that you sat through over the summer?
Sure. It got set up as a task force at the end of session last time. We had a bill that just said we do not want to place children with people that have been convicted of pedophilia. That bill died in the Senate. So it was held, it just didn't have time. Maybe it ran out of time. And so we talked to leadership and asked if we could do a task force on this issue. They set it up for the summer. We knew there's been a lot of problems. We had no idea what we were getting into. I think we met 6 or 7 times. For about 5 of those meetings, we met all over the state. We had we had one in North Idaho, Eastern Idaho, Canyon County, a couple in Boise, and hours. I mean, we did it from 9 till 4, and we collected hours and hours of testimony on issues with custody and parental rights and those kind of issues. The other thing we did that wasn't so public is that we did a survey to where families could fill out the survey and kind of look for trends of the structure, looking for names that continued to come up in the system that might be an issue. And so that's kind of been done separate, not through us, but through volunteers. And so we haven't even touched that information yet, but that's kind of how it came to be. And I was a co-chair along with Senator Nichols was a co-chair in the Senate. And it was amazing and heart-wrenching, the stories we heard from all over the state, the exact same story, that rights were being violated, families were being torn apart, parental rights were being ignored, and children were suffering. So that's kind of where we ended up.
Yeah. And what's great is I believe you published a report on your findings and some of the things that you want. Yeah, there it is. It's an exhaustive report. Yeah.
Pretty thick. I think it's about 160 pages. Wow. But we wanted to make sure that we had everything on the record in a presentable way when I think, class action lawsuits, for whatever reason, people might want it. This is all the testimony from the committee. You can find this online at, you have to go into interim committees, task force, and up at the very top, there's a little link that you can look at materials from the meetings. And this is the very last thing we put on there, which literally just talks about all the testimony from law enforcement, judges, citizens, parents, grandparents, the whole thing. It's all in that report. So.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so now we have the report, and now session has started. And I bet you have probably another stack of, you have your normal stack of bills, but then you probably have a stack for this issue, right?
It's amazing. For as many problems as we had, what we learned is almost all the problems were coming out of an area of code that we had not really give much direction to in the law. It was very vague. Courts are interpreting it different because there's really nothing written. And so there weren't definitions for some of the stuff that people were dealing with or timelines. And so that's what we tried. Really about 5 bills would take care of 95% of all the problems we heard across the state. Wow. And so the big fix is in 32717. It's if you just go Google Idaho Code 32717, you'll look at what we have for child custody. It's just a very small section of code, and that's where all the problems fell under that part of code. So what we did is came up with language. And with all the examples, we tried to stay vague enough because in every story, it's not just one-sided. It's not just all the guys are getting treated this way or all the women this way or victims this way. So we tried to get it at a high level that would fix the process, so they would have answers. I just lost you. Oh, there you're pulling it up. Yeah. So that's the part of code we're dealing with, and it's a fairly long bill we came up with. It's about 19 pages, but wow. The first page is just some code, where we're at in code. The second page, what we added is a lot of intent, what we really want as a legislature intent to protect parental rights and to protect children. And then what we were very lacking, there's several pages of definitions, because what we found is there's lots of terms being thrown out there by parent coordinators or CASA people or psychologists that have no definition in our code. So things are being interpreted differently across the state. And so a lot of it is definitions on some of these terminology. And then a big thing that you're going to hear from both sides on is we wanted to not take away parental rights if there's been no crime committed. So what we've tried to do is have a starting point of 50-50 for custody of seeing your children. And if there's reasons to not be 50-50, they can't just be made up. They can't just be hearsay or he said, she said kind of thing. if there's a really problem, then it's got to be adjudicated in the courts, and that will make a decision. What we've learned is there's a lot of people in abusive relationships, and when they go to divorce, they just want to get away from their abuser. And so they might make claims like, oh, they're sexually molesting my child, or they're being violent. And judges are making decisions about someone not based on adjudicated through the courts a crime. They're just literally believing one story over the other because we've given them no direction. So this will give them more direction in a starting point on when they make their decisions. And I think it'll take a lot of pressure off the courts. They do have a lot of discretion right now, and it's not consistent.
Representative Scott, when you talk about having, both sides might be, at odds or on some of this, are you saying that there's that you may not have like a bipartisan effort here, or is it just kind of like in the technical details, you think?
I'm sorry. In the technical details of the bill, when there's a custody case, there's usually a man and a woman fighting over a child. I'm talking about both sides of custody battles.
Yes, gotcha. Okay,
the custody battles are where all the problems are taking place. Right. So I was referring to that. Sorry, I wasn't clear.
No, that's fine. Because my follow-up question was going to be like, I can't imagine anybody being against trying to fix this problem. So do you think your bills have a, I mean, it sounds like you probably will have major support getting this stuff through.
Well, I think we're going to have a good chance. I do think that, people that are in situations where there is an abuser, I think it's easy to use the courts to get out of that situation because they don't want to address it themselves. Maybe they're too weak to address the abuser, or they just are too codependent or whatever. The courts should not be used for that because, so that's where I think we'll get some pushback with people that are maybe in really abusive relationships. But we cannot take away parental rights from people just because somebody doesn't like them, or, they have to have real reasons to take away parental rights. And these two people have made a child together. They both have a responsibility of that child. And the child wants both parents anyway, for the most part.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah. And it is really sad. And I can't imagine, having to like get into the weeds on all this stuff and dealing with it, because it's just like, we have seen those horrible instances where parents have abused their children. And we have seen also the other equally horrible when someone makes false accusations in order to advance their cause. So it really requires some threading of the needle and some due diligence here. And so hopefully that's all basically what you're doing is like you're giving the courts some parameters, some definitions, and some ways forward that hopefully protect everybody's rights.
Yeah, this is the bulk of the code. We have another segment that's in a different part of code that's custody interference, and that's for when there's two parents and mom has Johnny Monday through Wednesday, and dad has Johnny Thursday, Friday, Saturday, but mom won't give the child back, or dad won't give the child back. And so that is a real problem. And what happens is they try to fight it out, or they got to go back to the courts. The courts take time. It just puts a lot of undue work on the courts. So we've kind of approached that a little bit like the trespass law we passed several years ago. First offense, you don't drop your kid off on time. There's a penalty, second offense, third offense. So it's escalated as malicious. But there's some parents that haven't seen their kid in over a year because their spouse is refusing to show up and share the kid. So it's just, some of these stories would just break your heart. And you can read about some of them in here. There's so many more. Or you can watch the video on archive video, and it's sad.
yeah, we posted a few of those hearings on our channels for people to see, and it was we got a lot of outreach too when people watched it and said, "Oh, here's my story," and then I would try.
Right.
You got to contact the task force. Don't tell me. You got to contact them and stuff. So, well, great work on this. I know you've got a lot more other things going on as well, and I want to have you back to talk through those things. But I want to make sure people's attentions and eyes are on this as well. When do you anticipate these bills starting to make their journey through the system?
Well, I was going to RS this one today, and I had one other lawyer look at it, and they just brought up some little tiny changes. I mean, it's ready to go, but we might mess around with it a little bit more. Sometimes being perfect is the enemy of getting anything done here. So I might make a few more changes, and we'll get this. The chairman wants to have it out there so we can get feedback and get our hearing set. So I think probably you'll see it come out in the next week.
Okay, very good. All right. Well, Representative Heather Scott, let us know where people can follow you and keep track of your work.
Mostly on X. So Rep. Heather Scott.
All right. Sounds good. All right, Heather, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, we'll have you back.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Okay, bye. All right. Excellent work there. And she'll get it done. I think she'll get it done. That was it was. I mean, those were heartbreaking stories. I remember sitting there just like wanting to just kind of like, I wasn't watching live, but just, going through and saying, all right, let me see if I can find some key moments that we might want to play on the show or highlight in sharing videos and stuff. And I would just sit there and listen to, 20 minutes of testimony on one person and was just captivated by the story. It's outrageous, some of the things that were going on there. And then you're also sitting there and it's so strange. You're sitting there also like with like a psychology degree going, is this person telling the truth? Because this is so outrageous. I mean, there must be something else they're not saying. You find yourself thinking like, I wouldn't know how I would rule on this or where I would go. So it's such a sad situation when it comes to disputes between parents and when we have families involved. Okay. All right. Well, we are down at the bottom of the hour here. We kind of flew through this program. I don't know if there was anything else that I had for you, but tomorrow, hopefully, we'll have Representative Rob Beiswinger on to talk through some interesting big missteps by the governor a year or two ago. So we'll have him on to talk about that. But in the meantime, folks, once again, we want to make sure that you call us and leave us a voicemail. There it is. 208-402-4915. For that is exactly what we need to go. And then also you can go to idahosignal.live and you can listen to the program there. This episode will be uploaded there, and then it'll just replay if you miss any portion of this and you want to hear it and not watch it, which I don't blame you. All right, folks, thanks again for joining us. We'll be back here tomorrow, same bat time, same bat channel. And cheers.
This bill, I think, puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.